ko Sua Williams CO.
Yeah, I'll try not to take my full time here, Chairman. I think it is really important, this Clause 9 on fellows, particularly because for myself, and I speak for myself in this, this is sort of the first time I'm hearing about the work of the Royal Society of New Zealand. And so I'd be interested to hear from the sponsor of this bill in terms of the background towards fellows, how that name came to be, because in this day and age, I would have to say that it's a very male name. And why didn't they call it Sheila? And so I'd be interested in knowing what the background was on how the society arrived at that particular award. I'm sure, I don't mean to diminish or undermine the value of the award. I think I'm recognizing it is a prestigious award. And I'm recognizing that it's probably at the same level as the Nobel Peace Prize. And so, but I'd be interested from the sponsor as to the background of the particular name of fellow and how that has come to be to recognize this particular award. I also would like to hear from the sponsor as to recognizing what other speakers have said about the low numbers of women, Māori, Pacific and other ethnics. I think it's important that the Royal Society work towards identifying and recognizing the cream of the crop and the researchers in these particular areas, particularly as our nation moves forward. We need to hold them up as examples, hold them up as role models for the next generation that comes through. And so my question is, does the Royal Society have a plan for increasing or at least generating the competition out there so that we are seeing the cream of the crop coming through? I wouldn't like to see the Royal Society follow the example of the national government where they have no plan and at all. And so that's why we're in the economic mess that we're in at this particular time. And I don't want to see the Royal Society be in a similar mess. So does the Royal Society have a plan to promote that? I come back to the Section 9.1 when it's amending the name of the Academy Council and substituting with the Academy Executive Committee. Will changing of the name also change the status of that council? Will the changing of the name also change the function of that particular council? And because I wasn't a part of the member of the committee that heard the submissions of this, what was sort of the public submission with reference to changing that name? Because often when you're changing names of long-held names of societies such as Society of the Royal Society of New Zealand, which have a long history, I would suspect that there would have been quite a bit of, reluctance to move towards that. And I'd be interested to hear what the public have had to say. I go back again, sir, that for many working families throughout New Zealand, the work of the Royal Society of New Zealand is probably not well known. And I would be keen, if we are going to increase the numbers of people that we identify and acknowledge as fellows, deserving of the recognition of their work, deserving of holding them up as role models for the next generation coming through, then the idea of having a specific plan to roll that out is really the key, because as we all know, if there is no plan to make things happen, they don't happen. And we tend to then think, well, somebody's going to pluck some answer out of nothingness, as we've heard often time and time again from that side of the house. And so the final matter that I simply want to raise, the costing of changing the name, I mean, what sort of impact will that going to have on the Royal Society? Noting that there's to be no dividend or profit to any of the members, I'd be curious to know how will the Society maintain its work, and particularly how would you be prepared to fund such a plan to promote the distinction of these words.
I call Grant Robertson.
Just very briefly, Mr. Chair, I'm conscious that there are other colleagues who want to speak, but the question was asked by Sir William Seal about the origins of the term fellow, and using a research tool that perhaps the Royal Society may or may not approve of, Wikipedia, I'm able to tell Sir William Seal that the appointment of fellows was first authorised on the 22nd of April 1663 by the original Royal Society in the United Kingdom, and it allowed them to appoint fellows, perhaps not through the same process as the Royal Society of New Zealand, and 94 fellows were originally appointed, and then another 4 a little later, and these were known as the original fellows of the Royal Society. Interestingly, 2/3 of them weren't scientists, and Wikipedia speculates that one of the reasons for that was that the Royal Society needed money, and it had no funding from the Crown, and it needed money to operate, and so that it would appear to be the reason those fellows were charged an entrance fee of £4 at the time, but over time, obviously, the nature of being a fellow changed in the United Kingdom as it has in New Zealand, and the traditions about how one becomes a fellow have changed significantly. Just while we're on the subject, Mr. Chair, because I think it is interesting to reflect on the importance of the Royal Society. The Royal Society in the United Kingdom only has 1,300 fellows even today, so very, very few, and the 300 in New Zealand. People can do the maths and work out that there are more proportionately here in New Zealand, but in the Royal Society in the United Kingdom, from which the New Zealand Royal Society came, is still a very exclusive club. And the original members of that Royal Society included Christopher Wren, all sorts of people who were founding fathers of science. So I think the term fellow is certainly a historic one. I suspect it's been retained despite gender connotations because of that link back to those, as far back as 1663. But I just thought I would clarify that matter for the member.
Simon Bridges.
Chair, I move that the question be now put.
The question is that the question be now put. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes. Sorry? Point of order, Sir William Seal.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Chair. I did want to just raise the information that Mr. Grant Robertson had raised.
No. I didn't accept your call. I accepted the call of the member over here, and so that's the end of the matter. And I'm putting, the House will decide, the committee will decide whether we have a closure motion or not. The question is that the question be now put. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party votes called for. I'll ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
58 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
42 opposed.
Green Party.
9 in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
5 votes in favour.
Māori Party. Progressive.
1 vote for.
United Future. Honourable Chris Carter. Any other votes?
Members, the ayes are 74, the noes are 42. The question will be put. The question is that clause 9 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. We now move to clause 10. The question is that clause 10 stand part.